Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode, and it's brand new, hot off the press interview that I've not had for such a long time. Not this interview, but I've not had an interview for so long that it is all brand new, and as you can see, brand new background. The podcast has got a new name and bringing new content your way at last. I was waiting for this mini podcast studio that I've created slash cupboard, waiting for that to be completed before I started recording new interviews to bring your way so I can get it back on YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, hi. Well, you will be, because this video won't really be anywhere else. It will be a different intro for the podcast if you listen. So I'm going to bring my guest on, my first guest in so long, and it is Jo Howarth. Now, Jo is in my circle of connections, but she's such an expert in her own right in what she does. So she is a hypnotherapist. Hope I've got that right. And she is a mindfulness practitioner. It's so linked. Anyway, it's very much linked to my background of well-being and all about the mindset of this, because there's no point being our brand and our business if we have not got the internal, I suppose it's happiness, zen, calm. If we don't feel good in ourselves, we are not going to show up as we want to. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm going to bring Jo on. I'm not going to waffle too much. Let me bring Jo on and we shall say hi. Okay, you ready? See if it works. We are here. Hello. It worked. I'm always a little bit wary of that connection just going completely wrong. But yeah, I've just done a glowing introduction to you, Jo. No pressure. And I've said as well that you're the first interview in such a long time. And you're actually the first guest to have, well, you're not in my cupboard, but you're pretty much in my cupboard with me, Jo, having this interview. So there's no pressure, but you're the first one in a long time.
I'm honoured.
Yeah. How are you anyway? How are you from I always get this wrong. I always think you're closer to me than you are in the world, but you're in Chester, aren't you, or Cheshire?
I'm near St Helens, actually.
Oh, St Helens, you get it wrong again every
Yeah.
time. Terrible. Anyway, we are going to chat today about all things happiness. Can't wait. I was just saying there, just to give a really brief sort of rundown of, we can be in our brand, we can be our business, but if we've not got things right in ourselves, we're just not going to show up the way we want to, are we?
No, absolutely not. No, it's having that sense of well-being within yourself adds an untold amount of value to everything else that you do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't wait to dig deeper on that. We've probably just about scratched the surface. But you know what we'll do first? Let's chat about your journey. I always like to hear a little bit about your journey of how you got to where you are and how everything that you teach has been a massive part of your business, of your life, of you showing up as you want to in your business and brand. So it's just wherever you want to start, Jo. I know it's a big question. It's like, how did you get here? But wherever you want to start.
Okay. So, wow, that is a big question.
I know.
I got here through various means. I by trade I'm a therapist, and I run the Happiness Club, obviously, which is a therapeutic support service for people. But I'm a therapist because therapy helped me. So I used to work in marketing. I used to be an event manager, and at the same time as doing that job, I experienced massive levels of stress and anxiety on a daily basis. Event management is I was in my 20s. It's lovely and exciting, and you get to go places and meet people and put parties on, basically, and hooray. But everything has to be absolutely perfect, and it all has to be delivered bang on time, and you can't get out of it, and you can't wriggle out of it, and you can't change the deadline. So it's massively stressful, massively anxiety inducing industry to work in, as are all creative industries, in my opinion. And yeah, so I mean, I was already experiencing anxiety on a personal level, but the work I chose to do, or the work that found me, I don't think I ever chose to be an event manager, just added to that, really. And then I got married and I had my children, and event management and children do not mix in the slightest. I was working 17, 18-hour days sometimes as an event manager. So two small children, and that just doesn't go. So I needed to retrain. And for me, it was an absolute no-brainer that I was going to retrain as a therapist, because therapy had helped me cope for crikey, 10 or 12 years by that point. I'd had several rounds of therapy in that time that had helped me to grow as a person, to release all kinds of rubbish from my past, to understand myself more, to understand what I wanted from life, to understand how I wanted my life to look. I think actually, I always say if I hadn't had therapy, I don't think I would ever have actually been at a point where I could have got married and had children, which is all I'd ever wanted. All I'd ever wanted was to be part of a family. I just wanted my own kids. But I think without therapy, I wouldn't even have been able to get to that point. Um, so yeah, it was an absolute no-brainer that therapy was where I was going. Um, and like you say, for me, it's a really important part of who we are and how we get to where we want to be. I mean, the number of people I speak to, and I'm sure you're the same, and you say to them, so, what is it you want to create? And actually, they have no idea why they're doing what they're doing, or where they're going, or what they're going to do when they get there, or how they're going to make whatever it is happen, but they don't know what it is that they want to happen. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big conversation.
Well, it is, and yeah, we've got some time. We can chat about this, but I won't keep. Yeah, I'll keep asking questions as well because, like you say, even you're probably thinking, yeah, it's a big one to ask. It's almost like asking people to know what their purpose is in business terms. It's then to kind of they say about sharing your gift, bringing your story to it to help other people, but it's difficult, isn't it? Because I mean, one question I'm going to ask before we get into that even more is about therapy, and I still think there's a bit of stigma around it. But do you find that that people that come to you, or there's people you come across that need your help, or well, I see it all the time online. You see unhealed people trying to lead the way, but they just can't quite get there, can they? Because they've not done this deep work. But do they? How do they deal with it when they come to you when there is that stigma and they're probably not ready themselves? I don't know.
So yeah, there is still a stigma around therapy. Um, and also a lot of the stigma has been released, so that we have made strides forward. I mean, I've been practicing for nigh on 12 years, and it's changed a lot. There has been a lot less stigma now than there used to be, but there still is. People still think you only go to therapy if there's something really, really wrong with you and you're really wrong in some way.
Yeah,
And that, for me, that's not what therapy is. Therapy is about understanding that we're all human beings and we've all experienced less than ideal stuff at some points in our lives. I think I've only ever met one person in my entire life who's had an idyllic life from the word go. I don't think that happens for most people. And actually, ironically, she ended up in therapy because something bad happened and she had no coping skills whatsoever and
wow.
fell apart. So, so I'm not sure an idyllic life is where it's at either, right? But it's so the stigma is being removed step by step. But yeah, there still are a lot of people that see it as, oh God, or an insult. I had someone say to me the other day, I was going to suggest to my mum that she went for therapy, but she would, God, she'd be offended if I said that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? Why would your mum be offended if you
Mm,
suggested that she would benefit from therapy? Because that's the stigma that's around it, right? Is that, it's not a good thing.
yeah.
It's not something we want to do.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, and that's absolutely where I started as well. But for me now, I mean, I'm a therapy fan, obviously, but I have therapy all the time
Yeah.
myself, right? And have had for years, because I know that every time I do a round of inner work, I come out stronger, more confident, happier, more content, more peaceful, more calm. That's what therapy gives me every time I allow myself to experience it. So I do it as often as I can.
Love it, and I love the word there, allow, and I think that's a lot of people. Do you know what I say about stigma? But actually, a lot of the time we just put these own barriers up ourselves, don't we? We kind of I don't know whether it's letting too much noise in or our own conditioning. Because I mean, I'll share now that I literally went for my first. I say first, I've done it a little bit in the past when I lost my mum like 22 years ago. But I think as a 20-something year old, you don't really take it serious. But I literally started my first sort of therapy session last week. I've had a bit of a roller coaster couple of years, and I don't mind admitting that now. But rewind even 10, for what, even probably a few years. I don't think I would have shared that. So I think you're right, there's something in that, there's something turning. Or do you think it's just the acceptance in ourself? You know, it's society, but it's about ourself as well, isn't it?
I think, yeah, it's both. I think it is absolutely the acceptance in ourselves. I mean, I worked with a gentleman a number of years ago, and I used to, when I was first starting and a jobbing therapist, I used to visit my clients in their environments rather than making them come to me so that they were more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And I worked with this gentleman once, and we did 4 sessions in his house in this tiny little village in Cheshire. And on the 4th session, he divulged to me that he had told absolutely nobody. He was so ashamed that he was having to
Oh,
see me that he had told absolutely nobody, including his wife.
oh wow. Oh no.
At which point I said, so I'm going to leave your house now because I've been coming to your house at the same time every week for the last 4 weeks. Your neighbors are at some point going to say something to your wife about
Yeah.
this woman that lets herself into your house every week at the same time. I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to go because I'm going to go outside and find my car's been keyed or something at some point. But yeah, there
Yeah.
was so much shame around having to get help that he
Mm,
had told literally nobody in his life. And I think a lot of people feel that way about
mm,
having to get help, where, but really only with therapy, right? When we need to get help with our marketing or our sales or our business management, or that's okay. But we can't
mm.
possibly ask for help with ourselves.
No, I'm just sort of chuckling along still because as you were telling that story, I was like, I knew where that was going. I was like, it's quite telling, isn't it? He would rather somebody think he was probably having an affair than actually admit the truth about therapy, and that's like, what the?
Exactly. I know.
But you're right.
Bizarre.
Yeah, and we do this, don't we? That I think it's a very old cliche about getting our cars fixed and not looking after ourselves. You know, we will just go and get something else looked at, won't we? But not ourselves. I mean, do you think that is? So this is going to be a very wide open question, but do you think it's a bit of a British thing as well? I know, or is that just a bit of a cliche in itself? This not stiff upper lip, but we're meant to be quite uptight, aren't we?
Yeah, I think there's
Mm,
definitely some
tricky
British,
question.
yeah, there's definitely some British stuff in there. Um, but I don't think it's only Brits. I just think people find it, the thing with therapy and asking for help in that way is that we believe that when we do it, it means that there's something wrong about us, about who we are. And actually,
Mm,
that's not it at all. That's one of the myths that I try and dispel on my social media quite often. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with who you are. There's nothing wrong with how you are. All
mm,
that's happened is you've learnt some beliefs, some programs that aren't necessarily doing you any favors. And what
yeah.
therapy is there to do is to help you uncover those beliefs and release those programs so that you can live a fuller, more fulfilled, more satisfying life. That's it.
Yeah, love it. And I always do this if somebody delivers like a really clear message as well, just 'cause I talk about a lot about brand messaging. It's like if anybody wants an example of messaging, just rewind this because Jo did the perfect example there about what something can give you, and that's exactly it. So when you put it like that, if you, I suppose, the more people you say that to, it's almost probably like a light bulb moment, isn't it? It's like, oh, yeah, do you know, of course. And is that something about it? Is there something about needing not a reward, but what they're working towards. You know, sometimes when you feel like when you're at that point where you probably need that therapy, we probably can't see the woods for the trees. And is there something in that that people come to you wanting that reward a little bit as well from it?
Well, and a lot of people only come for therapy, and I was absolutely this person when I first went for therapy. They only come for therapy as an absolute last resort, and they're
Mm,
at the end of their tether, and they don't know anything else to do, and they don't know how to move forward, and they're completely lost, and then they go for therapy. Where for me, it's about like do it all the time, like
yeah.
release all that stuff all the time. I can remember growing up, actually I'm significantly older than you, but I can remember growing up, and when I was growing up it used to be funny to take the mickey out of Americans because they saw their shrink every
Yeah.
week. I can remember people around me laughing at the idea that you had to go and see a shrink every week, and you know see a therapist and actually now I'm like, do that,
Yeah.
because we soldier on through life trying to just keep going and keep going and keep going and not really listen to the things that are trying to just keep going rather than allowing ourselves to
Mm,
acknowledge that everything isn't as we would like it to be necessarily. And
yeah.
it's important to consider ourselves in
Yeah.
our lives, really.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is, and again, it's so easy to bring these cliches, and actually, I can really relate to this. But because before I was in branding and business mentorship, which I do now, I was a personal trainer 15 years. I really went into the wellbeing and mindfulness side. So there's so much that I can relate to, but sometimes it just fell on not so on listening ears, shall we say? People we know this stuff, but actually putting it into practice is really difficult. It probably does come back to that stigma, but something I was just going to pick up on is when I was asking about the question about it's a very British thing. Is it Brits? I had that same thought about Americans that it's just the norm, isn't it? Yeah, you watch any series even now, we don't bat an eyelid, and I look at it and I don't sit there judging them. So it's weird how we still judge that we're gonna be judged, or we judge ourselves from it. Just normalizing it, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's it. And that's part of the when you're talking about brand messaging, that's part of the messaging that I put out on my social media as often as I possibly can,
Mm,
without knocking people over the head with it. But it's not that there is nothing wrong with getting help. There's nothing wrong with
mm,
asking for help when you need it, in whatever area of your life you need it, whether it's brand messaging or whether it's sorting out some stuff that's going on in your head that you would rather wasn't going on in your head. There's
mhm,
nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with you as a person just because you can't sort it out for yourself. Because again,
mm,
that's where I come from. I was very much you just pull your socks up and get on with it. And if you can't sort it out yourself, you're not worth the paper you're written on, kind of thing.
mm.
Um, but actually, you know, I wouldn't I wouldn't pretend to be an expert in brand messaging any more than you would pretend to be an expert in therapy. And so if I ask you for help with my brand, that's exactly the same as you asking me for help on a therapeutic level, right?
Yeah, you're so right, and it's just something that it's just so closely attached to us. I mean, actually, it's funny thing with personal branding, I get that a little bit as well because it's still attached to them as a person, whereas where the example of, say, if it was your car or your house that needs fixing, that's okay because it's an external object, but as soon as it's us, and I don't know, again, especially there's a question I'm gonna bring in. I've already said about is it, a British thing, and I always do this because I know there's other gender as well, but male, female, there must be a big divide with that. I was just about to say that I think women are probably more likely to look after ourselves, but what do you think?
So honestly, most of my one-to-one clients across the breadth of my career have been men.
Oh, okay.
But they approach it in a very different way. I do work with women, and most of the members of the Happiness Club are female.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think women are more open to doing this kind of thing on a regular basis.
yeah.
But men are, in my experience, also very open to it, but they
Oh,
just approach it in a different way. So when I first started out as a jobbing therapist, I used to do quite a lot of in-person networking. And
yeah.
I would go to a networking meeting and I would present my 60 seconds on what I did and what my specialisms were. And, I specialize in
Oh,
stress and anxiety and I'm a therapist and blah, blah, blah. And I would have women quite easily come up to me during the meeting and say, can I have a one-to-one with you? Or this is what I'm experiencing. Can you help me with that? Just generally as we're stood milling around at the meeting. And if I had a one-to-one with a man in that meeting, we would talk about his business or something we'd done at the weekend or something. We wouldn't talk about what I do. But then I would leave the meeting and I would 9 times out of 10, I would have a man follow me to my car.
oh.
Not in a dodgy way.
Sounds quite scary.
Yeah, not in a dodgy way, just in a couldn't have that
Mm.
conversation in a room full of other people, but would kind of follow me to my car and go, oh, your partner, oh, actually I meant to ask you blah 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 blah. So
Mm.
they just approach it in a different way. They can be more, yes, secretive about it, shall we say.
Yeah.
um but But actually, my experience is that they are just as open to it as women. We just have to be aware
Mm.
that, we just all approach it in a slightly different way. That's all.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to link it back to any opportunity can bring into what I do because I think it
Mm,
can just help people listening. But with that approach, I talk about a lot about target. I hate the marketing terms, target market, ideal client. But when we're talking about talking to people differently, and sometimes I'll say that you have got pretty much like an ideal client, but for yourself, it's gonna be a little bit different, and it's not quite as black and white as saying I only help women in this age bracket, or so do you go with that in mind when you're doing either social media or, do you have a different audience or in person? I bet I'm just thinking over the years, you've probably become quite adaptable to that, would you say? That you know how to approach different people?
So I like to think so. I don't necessarily think I've got it nailed, but yeah, I mean, I've done the ideal client work. I know who my ideal client is, and it is a woman, and she is a certain age, and she does experience certain things, stress and
Mm,
anxiety, because that's my specialisms and that's where I come from, and I understand them. But so that's who I'm talking to when I do my marketing. I do have a very clear idea of who I'm talking to, but actually, and I do attract a lot of my ideal client, but I do attract a lot of people around that too. And I do think, like you say, it is about being adaptable in your messaging,
yeah.
and and not being afraid to be that, actually, not being afraid to veer off from your normal
Mm,
message. If you feel like there's a certain group of people that you want to help with whatever it is you do, then start speaking to those people in a way that they understand. A few years ago, I decided, and I dropped it after a few months, but I decided I was going to focus on helping C-level um, men,
mm.
senior executives in big businesses. And I was going to put myself out there. And my entire messaging changed overnight. I went from writing really long form, flowery posts on LinkedIn to literally doing 2 sentences in there.
Mm,
Because when I did the research, that kind of man doesn't have time to sit and read something long and flowery and lovely. He's not
yeah.
bothered. He just wants to know, I need help with this. Can you help me?
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, it is very much about being adaptable.
How did that work? You say that you changed it. Did you change it back? Did that feel like, because to me, your audience watching probably that's not even a subtle shift, is it? That's going from this is one day this is what I'm talking about, next day, poof, and I bet people watching are like, huh? Something like hacked your
Well,
account.
and I only did it on LinkedIn because that was where I was going to find those people. And then
Yeah.
I realized quite quickly, actually, that those people haven't got time to be on LinkedIn.
Ah,
So they
that's
weren't even
interesting.
seeing my posts. So I just went back to what I
Flowery.
was actually comfortable with and what, but as an example of changing your approach,
Yeah.
and again, I do presentations quite often to win corporate business or whatever. So again, it depends who's in the room in front of you as to how you're going to present the information that you're going to present, right? Because there's going to be people that prefer graphs and detail and percentages,
Mm,
and there's going to be people that prefer how you make them feel, and
mm.
and how
Love
and
it.
testimonials and things like that. It's all part of the mix, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. And there's something really key that you've just said there, because a lot of time in marketing, it can be quite black and white. And this is why I say about doing things a little bit differently. I said more soulful strategy, but it's a little bit softer. It's a bit more flexible because some people are quite rigid. It's like find your target market, find your ideal client, just speak to them. But actually, like what you do, really, you're helping people with stress, anxiety, chaotic lives, chaotic minds. Everything you're talking about is actually universal. It's not just one person. Everyone that you chat to, you might deliver it slightly differently, but sometimes people only hear the transformation of it. They're listening, going, "Actually, I need a bit of that," no matter how you've delivered it. So if you're in person and you might have done it all floral, flowery and more women focused, but actually the men are still going to hear it, aren't they? And probably more actually because men, I guess, this is not this is not all men, because they probably do like zone in and don't listen to the fluffy stuff, but just hear what they need to hear. They're going to do that anyway, aren't they? So there's no point you trying to single them out. It's being a little bit open to it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it is about having a mix. Like I say, it's a mix of the ways that you say things I mean, it's like on social media, and this is where I fall down sometimes, but because I'm a writer, so I like writing my messages. But ideally, you want to be doing a video every once in a while, a live every once in a while, and images and things like that. It's all part of the mix because everybody takes their information in differently, right? And they all respond
Yeah.
to different parts. So some people will respond to my graphics or my selfie and think, oh, she looks nice. I'll read that post. And some people won't even be bothered about what my selfie's doing. They just read the writing, So
Yeah.
it's it is about presenting a mix, I think, so that however someone takes their information in, you can appeal to them.
Love that. And again, really key. I mean, sure, something that I'm starting to bring in more and more is owning my own neurodiversity, ADHD, and I'm saying that on repeat. And I'm finding that a lot of people I work with don't feel the same when you do, like attracts like. I always say about being yourself to attract who you want to or attract a mirrored version of you sometimes. So I'll talk about this, attract ADHD. So something I want to ask there about just again, how you would is that something you bring into that, a different way of communicating for even that very different mind and brain, how you speak to them as well?
So again, I'm not an expert on neurodiversity. We do have some neurodiverse members in the Happiness Club. And the way that we approach it, the way that I approach it with my therapy and with the Happiness Club membership is very much to be open to feedback from people. So we've
Mm,
created resources on the Happiness Club app specifically because of feedback from neurodiverse members who've
mm,
said, you've created this meditation about this, but actually my brain is really struggling to take it in that way. This is what works for me. And so we've created resources specifically for those people, to help them take on board the we used to we produce something called a daily strategy every day for the members of the Happiness Club that goes out on our app. And it traditionally it was a piece of writing, because I'm a writer, that gives them a strategy. It's not too long, but it gives them a
mm,
strategy to use that day to help them look after their mental and emotional well-being. And I don't know how many years ago now, we had a lady, several ladies with ADHD who joined
mm.
the club, and they said they really struggled to keep their attention on that piece of writing. And so
Yes.
now we do videos as well, right? So
Ah,
so we do the piece of writing and we have a video of whoever's created that daily strategy. So most of the time it's me, but some of the therapists and Happiness Club trainers chip in too. So there's a video of whoever's created that piece of content, reading that piece of content. So now, however you take your information in and however you're most, whether it's audio, visual, or written, you can take the information in. So for
mm,
me, I think that's important. I mean, I train people to become hypnotherapists as well. That's another part to my business. And
yes.
again, that's an increasing subject. Well, that's a subject that's coming up increasingly with my trainees and my graduates, is working with neurodiverse clients. And again, I've worked with neurodiverse clients and I use the exact same tools and techniques with them as I use with my neurotypical clients. But I listen to the client. And I mean, that's
Mm.
parts of being a therapist. I listen to the client and what they respond to and what they need. And then I carve my therapy around that, basically.
Love it. Oh, no, I'm nodding along and this it's funny with ADHD because myself, even this podcast, I used to really struggle. I would think of things and I had to jot it down and I'm getting better at that. It's learning, it's again being aware of your own learning styles, isn't it, and how you do things. But I'm just thinking with that, and I'm forgetting now as I'm chatting, I'm like ADHD is gone out of my mind. But no, I just love the idea of adapting to different people, listening to them. Because I remember years and years ago, so I say about I've tried therapy only recently is I feel like I'm properly giving it a go for the first time. But actually, it's brought it back that I did try CBT years ago. It's probably about 10 years ago. And that didn't work for me. But at the same time, I didn't have my ADHD diagnosis then. And I felt a bit broken because I thought everyone's saying how amazing CBT is. Why can't I do it? Why can't it work for me? And now, since the diagnosis, learning about the way I learn, I'm like, that's why it was too structured for me. Do you come across that a lot where you're just having to change it up? And because, especially if they're not diagnosed like I wasn't, that's really hard, isn't it? They're not even aware themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And CBT is a very conscious level therapy. It's very much about um, being very conscious of what's going on in your head, and
Mm,
then consciously making it takes a lot of effort to
yeah.
make the changes. So I'm not trained in it and I've not experienced it, but I've had a lot of people sit in my hypnotherapy chair who've had several rounds of CBT, and it's either made no difference or temporary difference. And I'm
Mm,
not bashing it, because I've also spoken to lots of people who it's worked beautifully
yeah.
for. But I think that's the point of therapy, is there is not one size fits all. There just isn't.
Mm,
um, you know, counseling, talking therapy is beautiful. It absolutely has its place. But for me, up to a certain point, because once you get past a certain point, all you're doing is repeating and repeating and repeating and embedding and embedding, embedding. Whereas to start with, it's a release. So
mm,
hypnotherapy, not everybody is it responds to hypnotherapy. Not everybody responds to tapping. Not, I've tried tapping numerous times. Sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. Hypnotherapy
mm,
seems to be the one that fits for me. So there isn't one solution for everybody.
yeah.
Does when I'm out on social media and everyone, you see these posts from people going, "Oh my God, I found it, the one modality, it's going to change your life, everybody's lives." You don't know that, right? Don't
Mm,
make that promise. It
yeah.
absolutely has the potential to. Everything has the potential to. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's going to work for that person, because they're
Mm,
my mentor, my trainer, my therapist always quotes, I think it's Carl Jung. I'm going to forget who actually did the original quote, but he says all the time, every person is a universe of one,
ooh, I like that.
right?
Mm,
We're
yeah.
all, what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa.
Yeah, I love that, and that's coming from myself. Again, ADHD, I like to bring myself into this, but, I bring it in is in things like, I'm a twin. I'm an identical twin, and I always share that, well, I now share this, that I was brought up being told you're exactly the same, and people treat you the same, and that's a classic example of, I mean, we say about everybody being different, but when you're actually pinned as being exactly the same, yet you come to the realization you're not the same, and even then, things don't work for me that work for my twin sister, my identical, apparently, twin sister. So it's just hard, isn't it? Kind of breaking that down. And really, it's owning our own uniqueness in this as well, isn't it? That things,
Yeah.
do you ever have that? And if you had that, actually, I'll bring this round. Have you had that where you've tried something, whether it is in therapy terms or something else, where you've tried it, it hasn't worked for you? And actually, that can just be a negative spin, can't it? Like I said about not feeling good enough, then that it's not worked for us. Can you think of anything?
Yeah, I mean, I've got so many examples of that in so many different areas of life. And, again, with, like you say, with the therapy thing, when something doesn't work, we
Mm.
tend to take it on ourselves, right? So, oh God, there's something wrong with me. Again, back to that, there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Please believe me, if you're listening to this, there's nothing wrong with you. You are completely unique. You are just you. And whether it's in marketing, and there's all marketers out there with the best of intentions who say, I've solved it, I've got the strategy for getting 60 billion
Oh,
clients 5 minutes flat and earning £3 million in 2 seconds. I've got the strategy, you need it. But that strategy worked for them. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. Um, and because
mm.
we all want the things that person's got, that uber successful person's got, we all go, oh yes, I'll do your strategy. Then it doesn't work, and so then we go, shh, I've done it wrong. And he swore then.
You can swear,
Oh,
we can, yeah.
I've done it wrong. It's something about me. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my business? What's wrong with the, and it's not. It's just that you're trying to use somebody else's strategy and you're not them.
Mm,
That's it.
yes. We say it louder from the back, and I think that's something like that is actually on my homepage. It's the same thing, if like that we just end up same thing. I love how you brought that in, because it is like we try it, we fail, we think there's something wrong with us. That person's tried it and been really successful. We know, I'm going to bring a bit of an old school saying here without me swearing, but naff all. I don't know if that's a northern saying, but we know naff all about their life. I'm quite liking
Yeah.
that saying now. About, we don't know even the privilege they've had along the way. We don't know if they've had their mortgage paid for and they can put all their money into marketing. We don't know anything about their mindset, the way it works for them. And I'm constantly calling BS on it these days. I'm just like, do it your way. And it's the same thing with therapy, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. And 9 times out of 10, when you look beneath the surface, and I sound like I'm bashing people, I'm not trying to bash someone, but
No.
when you look behind the surface of someone who's uber successful in this area, actually they're maybe not quite so successful in this area of life, right? There
Mm,
are lots of different areas of life. And if somebody's super successful in business, they might have a health problem, or they might have relationship issues, or they
mm,
might be successful in business but have anxiety that's going through the roof every single day. And this is the beauty, I guess, and the downside of social media as well, is that you only get to see what someone shows you,
mm.
what
Yeah,
they choose to show you. So it is really always about being true to yourself and who you are and how things work for you,
yeah,
and and remembering that there's more than that side of life. If your relationships are super beautiful and amazing and your health is blooming, but your business isn't quite doing so well and your marketing strategy is not working, I know which one I'd rather have. So it's
mm,
it's I mean, and I think that's the eternal human thing, isn't it, that we want all of it to be working perfectly all the time.
yeah. Not going to happen, is it? I don't think.
Not hugely real that, but
No, but as you were saying that, I was trying to think of somebody, and I thought the person that came to mind with me, and even though we know this in his death, rest his soul, but with Steve Jobs, it was quite renowned, wasn't it? I don't know if you've seen the movie, if you've seen his movie, his life story. You haven't? It's quite interesting actually, and it shows again, they probably dramatise a lot of it, but it shows that at the expense of his success of Apple, he was actually quite a ruthless man. His relationship with I think it was his daughter. Don't quote me on that. But his relationship suffered for his pursuit of this success. And you look at him; he's a household name. Apple. I mean, I love Apple. I was just cursing before at this new PC that I'm recorded on, saying bless its soul, but I can't stand PCs. I love Apple. It's become huge, hasn't it? But when you look behind the scenes, it wasn't a famous quote on his deathbed. It was something like it was something. There was some regrets shown about that, and that's telling, isn't it?
hugely so, hugely so. And I mean, I don't know that there's a person alive that's gonna, I mean, I don't believe in regrets anyway, but it is what it is, right? Whatever's happened has happened. If you're going to regret it, all you're doing is using your energy in the now about
Yeah.
something that's done that you can't do anything about. So
Love that.
not much point in that, in my opinion, although we all do it.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it is, we see the parts of somebody that either A, they want us to see, or B, we want to see in them, and we
Ooh,
kind of ignore the rest of it, right? So
yeah.
it, I need this conversation so much today. This is amazing. Thank you so
Oh,
much. this
really?
this is reminding me of my own stuff, right? Is that I don't have to be anybody else or do anything the way anybody else does
Yeah.
stuff. I can just do my stuff. That's it.
I love that, and I do that a lot of time. I'll come off this conversation going, "Oh, that I need to do that," because it's just like having a chat, and that's why I love bringing guests on. I do a solo and then the interview, and I always get so much from the interview and the chat because it's just yeah, I just love it. But yeah, well, I say I've gone off on one now, but yeah, about that finding the perfect balance and I think you just answered it in yourself there, actually. It's probably not going to happen. But do you get that when people come to you? And I'm not going to say gender or even nationality here, but people come to you. Have they ever come to you wanting you to fix it all? I'm sure they have. I used to have this in personal training. People used to come to me with it. I'll just quickly say, actually, I've probably shared this before and I'm probably boring all the listeners. But once a person came to me, it was like, right, I need a promise from you. What are you going to do for me? Am I going to lose? Like, say, if it was always weight loss. I look back and like, oh, it was never just. It's not about that. Can I lose 4 stone in a month? I was like, well, no, unfortunately not. Why? You're a personal trainer, and I was like, I don't have a magic wand. So, have you had that?
All the time, all the time. Not all my clients, but a lot of my clients think that I have some kind of magic wand that I'm going to wave and all their problems are going to disappear and they're going to be gloriously happy for the rest of their life just off this one session.
Mm,
And I mean, to start with, largely, I will allow them to believe that I am fixing them, but they're not broken. and I'm not
Mm.
fixing anybody. And
Yeah.
as we go through the sessions, that becomes wildly apparent, and they realize that actually they're responsible for their own lives, for their own healing.
Mm. Yeah.
All I am doing is facilitating that. And you do the same in what you do. You facilitate someone else's
Yeah.
marketing, messaging, brand, right? That you're a facilitator, same as me. And I don't have
Mm.
a magic wand any more than you do, or any more than anybody else does, you know. But yes, I've
Mm.
absolutely had a very high profile coach once who is uber successful, had a serious medical issue, and one of the things I'm trained in is hypno healing, so we can heal um, physical ailments with hypnotherapy. I've worked with people with cancer and all kinds of things. It's brilliant. Uh,
Wow.
and literally hung up on me because I told them that it would take more than one session for me to fix this medical ailment that she had been carrying around for years.
Oh.
And
One session.
would talk to me because I wasn't going to be able to fix her in one session. I was like, oh my word.
You'd be a millionaire if you could do that. If you had that power, it's a bit like going back to America, you know, where they go in and there's like the oh hail, I can't think what it is, you know, and there's miracles and they do the dramatic like collapsing. I can just imagine that people coming to you going, do that for me.
You
Hmm.
know, I mean, belief is a powerful thing. And if
Yeah.
you believe, you can, you know, it is I mean, everything in the world, or everything we do is based on belief. Everything. It's all based on the beliefs that we hold in our subconscious mind. Every single thing we do, it's all driven by beliefs.
Mm.
Um, but yes, that I don't have a magic wand, and there
No.
is no
If you
such thing,
do, if you do,
fortunately.
send it my way. I think that'd be I think
Ditto if you
everyone.
find it.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I just love this chat, and even everything you're saying is so similar to what I do because yeah, everybody wants this fixing. But I mean, let's look at. I'm going to bring it back a little bit. I was going to say this right at the beginning, but we've had like a massive. We've done this back to front. We've gone all the way through it, and I was going to actually ask, what is hypnotherapy? We've gone way around the houses here, but well, you probably answered it. But let's just talk about that before we kind of go back to that sort of chat that I love as well.
Okay, so hypnotherapy basically is, sounds fairly obvious, is therapy in hypnosis. So it's dynamic therapy. It is dealing with the subconscious mind. So you have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind as a
Mm.
human being. Your conscious mind is your thinking brain. You consciously know what you want to do and how you want to be, but you're not necessarily doing or being those things, because in your subconscious mind you have every belief that you have about life, the universe, and everything, including yourself and what you're allowed and what you're worthy of,
Mm.
sits in the subconscious mind. And what hypnotherapy allows us to do is go into the subconscious mind and go, hello, you know, this belief that Jo's carrying around, that she's not good enough or she doesn't deserve it, or whatever the belief is, that's not really helping her very much. Could we change it? Yeah,
Mm.
okay, but let's change it. That's a massively simplified version of what I do,
Yeah.
obviously. But that's it in a nutshell. And people get nervous about it because we have preconceived notions and beliefs about what hypnosis is.
Mm.
People think it's voodoo, they think it's mind control, they think I'm going to go in and do things that they don't want to do, and that's not possible.
Mm.
Um, and Actually, hypnosis is a completely natural state of mind to be in. We all spend about 85% of our day every day naturally in hypnosis. It's just a daydream like
Wow.
state.
I love that.
Anytime you've been away with the fairies, you've been in hypnosis. That's it.
Oh,
That's
wow.
all.
That's just I always sort of love learning new things, but I love sort of statistics as well. I'm rubbish at saying them. I could never say them back. But that's amazed me that and just as you were chatting then about people think it's a mind control, do you ever have this as well that TV has probably got a lot to answer for, hasn't it? All these shows where they, you know, it's probably staged completely, but old school Paul McKenna, you had all that, didn't you? Do you have that to come up against as well?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, one of the things I say to my clients in their first session is, I can't make you do anything you want to do. I can't make you cluck like a chicken unless you want to cluck like a chicken, right? The only way I can make you cluck like a chicken is if you actually want to do that. It's not, you know, the people that get up on the stage with the stage hypnotists are already in that frame of mind that they're going to do whatever they're suggested to them. If they don't do what's suggested to them, that stage hypnotist is going to send them back into the audience
Ah,
sharpish, right?
mm,
That's what's going to happen. So,
yeah.
um, you know, it's not It really isn't. I used to watch this American TV show, which was like a detective series, and they had this murder mystery one week where all these different people that weren't connected in any way whatsoever were being murdered, but they were all being murdered in the same way, right? So exactly the same way. And they could follow the breadcrumbs, the detectives could follow the breadcrumbs to the killers really easily, and they were all killed in exactly the same way but by completely different people. And it ended up that
Mm.
the actual master criminal was a hypnotist who had hypnotized these people to go out and kill other people. And I got so angry, I was literally shouting at the TV going, no, that's not possible, you can't do that. And I refused to watch the rest of the series because
Yeah.
no, they
Oh,
didn't do
no.
their research. So
Yeah, that's when like what you do just gets an absolute bad rep. If you can turn people into psycho killers.
exactly that, right? It's, yeah, no, not possible.
No, that's so brilliant. I just like I said, just the breaking it down for one of what it is and what it isn't. But I just like that we even brought that in because I was thinking, what objections do people have to it? And it's just it seems ridiculous stuff, doesn't it? You watch a stage show and you know it's not really real, but people still believe it all, don't they?
Exactly. I mean, I always say the people that are up on that stage would do what the hypnotist is asking them to do after 6 or 7 pints anyway, right?
Yeah. That's how they should do
Pretty
it, shouldn't they? They could just give them drink and get them on stage and mind you, I think they do. I think it's Jerry
um,
McKyle that probably did
yeah,
that.
exactly.
So let's talk about again. I'm going off on one, but there's certain things. Yeah, I always keep these quite relaxed. But there's something else I want to bring up that we're connected on Facebook as well, and I love. And you probably know what's going to come up, but I'm assuming this is part of your happiness club, which we've not really talked about. But we'll put all the links in the show notes, so it's all there. If you want to find out what Jo does, have a look at the happiness club, go and connect with Jo. It's all in the show notes. But what I want to chat to you on a personal level, and I'd love to know if you actually share this in the Happiness Club as well, is your glad list. I'm not going to say too much about this. Obviously, it's gratitude based. It all leans into exactly what you're about. But talk us through that, just for anybody who's listening that hasn't seen your glad list. What is it and why you do it? And yeah, what it
So
means to you.
it is my version of a gratitude exercise. Most gratitude exercises are very general. So they'll ask you to make a list about all the things in your life that you're thankful for, which is beautiful and brilliant. And please do that, yes. But the glads are very specifically about that particular day. So
Yeah,
you sit down at the end of your day and you reflect back over that particular day. And
yeah.
you find as many things as you can from that day that you're glad about, and you make a list out of them. You can do it verbally, you can write them. We do a nudge at 9 o'clock in the evening on the Happiness Club app to get people to do
Ah,
their glads. Some of them do them publicly on the app, most of them do them privately. Um, but I share mine publicly on my Facebook and sometimes on LinkedIn if I haven't already fallen asleep. It's the last thing I do before I go to sleep. I do mine publicly just in an attempt to inspire other people to join in and do them, whether they do them on my post or do them privately themselves,
yeah,
just to find as many things, because I very much believe that there's always good stuff, even in the day from hell. There's
yeah.
always good stuff. It's just when we have a difficult day, that's where our focus tends to go, on the difficult and the challenging and the negative, where actually, even on a crappy day, there's good
Mm,
stuff. So
yeah.
it purposely trains your brain to just sit and find that stuff at the end of the day.
Love it. And it definitely does inspire me. Sometimes I might join in with something that's really struck a chord. Half the time I probably don't, but it definitely I see it and it goes in on some level and it's really heartwarming to read it anyway. I think it's something really heartwarming about reading somebody else's gratitude list that makes
Yeah.
you reflect on yours. So I love it. And I think it's the perfect place to wrap this up a little bit as well. And I'm going to actually I always do this sort of spur of the moment sort of thing. But let's look at the day isn't over, but let's give some examples of what is your glad list today, Jo, so far.
Oh my word, how long have you got? Okay, so I'm glad that I messaged my two daughters first thing this morning and I got replies from them, which doesn't always happen.
Yay.
I'm going through a divorce at the moment, so they're with their dad this week, so I miss them badly. So
Oh,
I'm glad that I got messages with them this morning before they went to school. I'm glad that I walked my dog in the park, and I'm glad that he stopped to say hello to every single person that we walked
every
past,
single.
without exception. I'm glad that he's fast asleep on the sofa over there now. I'm glad that I had Nutella on toast for my mid-morning snack because that's my
Ooh.
favorite thing ever. I'm glad that my daughters gave me roses for Mother's Day yesterday, and I'm glad that they've come out in the vase there and they're absolutely beautiful. I'm glad that I'm speaking to you,
Oh,
obviously. I'm glad that I've been on a mastermind call before I came and spoke to you, and I'm glad that I worked with a one-to-one client this morning and helped them. So that's where I'm up to so far. I'm
love it.
thinking by bedtime I'm going to have lots more to add to that list.
Yeah, love it. And you're getting me thinking of my glads now. I'm going to just say a couple of glads. Obviously, more that it's be a cheesy way to end it, wouldn't it? I'm so glad to have you on here, Joe. But I am,
Oh,
it's been really brilliant. I knew it was be a good chat anyway. You just know you get a vibe. You're like, this is gonna be an easy, flowy sort of chat that I don't even have to think about it. It's been so good. But yeah, I'm glad for that. And Joe, I'm glad for technology on my side ish today. It's not been. It took me about an hour to prep for this interview because it's been so long and on a new PC. It was quite stressful, but yeah, like you say, you can turn that into the
isn't it?
glad that it
Yeah,
worked, and
yeah.
we've managed to do this. So yeah, I love that, and even just you saying that list there, I hope that's inspired other people. Look for that good, make your own glad list, and Joe, come and share it. Come and share it with myself on my social media. Find Joe, share it on there, and let's just get that world. Everybody just making these glad lists and bringing the good
Yay.
stuff because it's there, isn't it? If we look for it.
Always.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That's been such a brilliant chat. Everyone go and connect. Go and find out about the Happiness Club. Connect with Joy. Something's resonated today and you feel like you need to connect, then yeah, go for it. But thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much for this chat.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.